The wind screamed through the mountain pass like a living thing. Snow fell so thick that trees disappeared into white nothing just 10 feet away. The small creature dragging herself through the drifts had stopped shivering an hour ago. That was bad. She knew that was bad, that Rin's wings hung useless against her sides. The left one bent at an angle that made her stomach twist every time she looked at it. Her scales, normally a deep blue that shimmered in light, had turned dull and gray. Frost clung to the membranes between her talons. Each breath burned her lungs with cold that her body was never meant to endure. 3 days since the crash. 3 days since her reconnaissance ship had clipped a mountainside during the storm and tumbled into a valley of rocks and pine trees. 3 days since the rest of her crew had died on impact, while she, small enough to be thrown clear, had survived. The word felt like a joke now. Her homeworld Ascar had 3 suns. The coldest season there felt like a pleasant spring day on this frozen planet. Her people had conquered 12 star systems, built cities that scraped the sky, developed technology that could reshape matter itself. Yet here she was, no bigger than this planet's house cats, dying in the snow because her own body could not handle a simple temperature drop. The irony would have made her laugh if she had the strength. Lights appeared through the storm. Rin's head lifted slightly. Yellow light, warm and steady, spilling from an open doorway. Some kind of structure built against the hillside. The primitive mammals who lived on this world built such things. Her briefings had covered that much before the collective had forbidden all contact with Earth. That was what they called this frozen death trap. Her training told her to avoid contact. The collective's rules were absolute. These humans were too primitive, too dangerous in their unpredictability. First contact had to be controlled, managed, negotiated by those who understood such things. But her training had not prepared her for dying alone in the cold. Rin dragged herself forward. Her back legs barely worked anymore. The frost had gotten into her joints, turning movement into agony. She focused on the light. Just the light. If she could reach the light, maybe the warmth would be enough. Maybe she could hide in whatever shelter these mammals had built. Maybe she could survive one more day. The snow gave way to flat stone, some kind of pathway leading to the structure. The doorway was so close now. She could hear sounds from inside, metal on metal, a voice humming something tuneless and low. Rin pulled herself over the threshold and collapsed. The humming stopped. She tried to lift her head, but could not. Her eyes could still move, though. She saw boots first, old and worn, covered in stains. Then legs covered in some kind of blue fabric. Then a face leaning down toward her, an old male human. Hair gone silver, face lined with years, eyes the color of the sky before the storm had hit. Those eyes went wide when they saw her. His mouth opened slightly. She waited for the scream, for him to run, for him to attack. Instead, he knelt down beside her. "Oh, you poor thing," the human said. His voice was rough but gentle. "What happened to you?" Rin's translator device, embedded at the base of her skull, picked up his words and fed them directly to her brain. She understood him perfectly, but she could not respond. Her jaw would not move. Her body was shutting down, conserving the last bits of warmth for her core organs. The human reached toward her, then stopped. His hand hovered in the air. "You're not from around here, are you?" he said softly. "Don't think we have anything like you in these mountains." He stood and moved out of her line of sight. Rin heard drawers opening, objects being moved around. She tried to track him, but her eyes would not focus anymore. The warmth of the structure was already starting to hurt, that terrible burning sensation that came when frozen flesh began to thaw. Fabric surrounded her suddenly, soft and thick, wrapping around her body. The human was covering her with something. Then more fabric and more. She felt herself being lifted gently, cradled against something solid and warm. "Easy now," the human said. "I've got you." He carried her deeper into the structure. She caught glimpses of tools and machines, things she did not recognize. Then he set her down on something soft near a source of heat. The warmth rolled over her in waves. Too much, too fast, but she could not pull away. "Let me look at that wing," the human said. Rin felt careful fingers touching the broken wing. She tried to pull back, but had no strength. The human made a soft sound, almost like a sigh. "That's bad," he said, "but I've seen worse. Had a hawk once with a break, just like this. Took some time, but she flew again." He moved away again. Rin's vision started to blur. Shocked, she thought. Her body was going into shock from the temperature change and the pain and the 3 days of hell she had endured. "Stay with me now." The human's voice came from somewhere far away. "You're safe now. I promise you're safe." Those were the last words Rin heard before the darkness took her. But they stayed with her, even in the fevered dreams that followed. Words that made no sense coming from a primitive mammal who should have been screaming or running or calling for his authorities that you're safe now, .as if her safety mattered to him. As if she was something worth protecting instead of a violation of galactic law that should be reported immediately. As if this stranger would actually keep that promise. The wind howled outside, but Rin was warm. For the first time in 3 days, she was warm. And somewhere in the darkness of unconsciousness, some part of her began to hope that maybe, just maybe, she would survive to see another day. David Reeves sat in his workshop chair and watched the small alien creature sleep. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he had not noticed. He had covered her with every spare blanket he owned and positioned the space heater to keep her warm without overheating. The broken wing worried him. He had said as best he could with the materials he had on hand, the same way he used to splint broken wings on injured birds. But this was no bird. His phone sat on the workbench behind him. He should call someone. The police, maybe, or the military. There had been reports of something crashing in the mountains 3 days ago. Helicopters have been searching ever since, but the creature was so small, so fragile looking under all those scales. And she had crawled into his garage like a wounded animal seeking shelter. David had never been good at turning away things that needed help. He settled deeper into his chair and pulled his coat tighter around himself. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, a creature from another world slept fitfully, trusting him with her life whether she knew it or not. "Well," David said quietly to the sleeping dragon, "guess we'll figure this out together." He picked up his cold coffee, took a sip anyway, and kept watch through the night. Pain woke Rin before anything else. Sharp and insistent in her wing, dull and throbbing in her legs. But she was warm. That realization came second, and it was almost as shocking as the pain. She was actually warm. Her eyes opened slowly. Gray morning light filtered through a small window above her. She lay on some kind of padded surface buried under layers of soft material. The heat source nearby hummed steadily. Metal tools hung on walls around her. The smell of old oil and something organic filled her nostrils. Memory returned in pieces. The crash. The cold. Crawling through snow. The open door. The human Rin's head turned sharply. There, slumped in a chair beside her, an old human male slept with his chin against his chest. The same one from last night. He had not left. He wore a heavy coat and his arms were crossed against the cold. But he had stayed. Why had he stayed? The movement of her head must have made a sound. The human stirred, blinked, then sat up straighter. When he saw her eyes open, his weathered face broke into a smile. "You're awake," he said. "That's good. Real good. How do you feel?" Rin stared at him. Her translator fed her the words, but they still felt wrong. He was asking about her well-being, as if it mattered to him, as if they were not two completely different species from different worlds. "I feel pain," Rin said. Her voice came out as a raspy hiss through her translator. The human did not even flinch at the sound. "I bet you do," he said, standing slowly like his joints hurt. "That wing's broken pretty bad. I said it best I could, but I'm no doctor. Just used to work on injured birds sometimes." He moved to a counter and poured liquid from a container into a cup. Steam rose from it. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down properly, keeping some distance between them. "Name's David," he said, taking a sip from his cup. "David Reeves. I'd offer you some coffee, but I'm guessing you probably don't drink it." Rin's mind raced. This was first contact. Actual first contact with a human. The collective would have her executed for this. But what choice did she have? "I am Rin," she said carefully, "of the Scarth people." "Rin," David repeated, testing the sound. That's a nice name. Scarith, huh? That where you're from? My homeworld, yes. Long way from home then. Rin almost laughed at the understatement. Very far. David nodded and took another sip. Rin watched him carefully, trying to read his intentions. In Scarith culture, every interaction had layers of meaning. Every gesture carried weight. You helped others only when it benefited you somehow. That's how to be repaid. Favors were currency. But this human just sat there drinking his hot liquid and looking at her with what seemed like genuine concern. You must want something, Rin said finally. You saved my life. What do you want in return? David's eyebrows went up. In return? I don't want anything. That makes no sense. Everything has a price. Does it? David set his cup down. You were hurt and freezing. I helped because you needed help. That's all. Rin's tail twitched with agitation. But what do you gain? The knowledge that you're not dead in the snow, I guess. David shrugged. Look, I know you're probably scared. Hurt and far from home and stuck with some stranger. But I'm not going to hurt you or demand things from you. You can rest here until you're healed enough to do whatever you need to do. This was not how species interacted. Rin had studied hundreds of civilizations. All of them operated on systems of exchange and benefit. Altruism was a myth, a story told to children. Everyone wanted something. You should report me to your authorities, Rin said, testing him. There are military forces searching for my ship. They would reward you. Probably, David agreed. But then what happens to you? I will be taken, studied, questioned. Would they hurt you? Rin considered lying, but found she could not. Probably. David picked up his cup again. Then I won't call them. Why not? Because you've been through enough already. He said it so simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world that Rin's mind could not process this. She tried a different approach. You must have questions. About my technology, my ship, my people. Sure, I'm curious, David admitted. But you're recovering from injuries. Questions can wait. I could tell you about advanced science. Things your people have not discovered yet. That'd be interesting, I suppose. But it's not why I helped you. Frustration built in Rin's chest. Then why? What is your purpose? David was quiet for a moment. He looked down at his cup, swirling the liquid inside. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. My wife and died 2 years ago. Cancer. I sat with her every day in the hospital for 6 months. Held her hand, read to her, just kept her company. Didn't cure anything. Didn't change the outcome. But she wasn't alone. He looked up at Rin. You crawled into my garage hurt and scared and alone. I couldn't fix everything, but I can make sure you weren't alone. Sometimes that's enough. Rin felt something strange in her chest, an emotion she did not have words for. In all her training, in all her preparation for this mission, no one had prepared her for simple human kindness. I do not understand you, she said quietly. That's okay, David said with a small smile. I don't always understand people either, but we don't have to understand everything right away. He stood and moved to the counter again. This time he brought back a plate with different types of food on it. Fruits, some kind of cooked grain, pieces of meat. Wasn't sure what you'd eat, so I brought a bit of everything. Take what you want. Rin looked at the offering. The meat smelled acceptable. She reached out slowly, testing whether he would pull it away. He did not. She took a piece and ate it. The taste was strange, but not unpleasant. Thank you, she said. The words felt inadequate. You're welcome. They sat in silence for a while. Rin ate slowly while David finished his coffee. Outside, the storm had passed, but snow still covered everything visible through the window. There are search helicopters, David said eventually. They've been looking for 3 days. If they come by here, I'll hide you in the basement. It's warmer down there anyway. Set up a better space for you to recover. You would hide me? Lie to your authorities? I'd keep you safe, David corrected. There's a difference. Rin studied this strange old human who defied everything she thought she knew about how intelligent species behaved. He gained nothing from helping her. In fact, he risked punishment from his own kind. Yet he did it anyway. Why do humans do this? She asked. Help others without benefit? David thought about that. Not all of us do, I guess. But a lot of us try. My daddy used to say we're all just walking each other home. Life's hard enough without making it harder for folks who are struggling. This philosophy is common among your kind. Common enough. We have our share of selfish people, sure. But we also have firefighters who run into burning buildings and teachers who spend their own money on supplies for students and strangers who stop to help someone with a flat tire. He smiled. We're not perfect, but most of us try to do right when we can. Rin absorbed this information. Her people had observed humanity from a distance. They had seen the wars, the conflicts, the divisions. The collective had judged humans too primitive and violent for contact, but they had missed this strange tendency to help each other without calculation. I think, Rin said slowly, that my people do not understand yours at all. Well, David said, standing with his empty cup, you've got time to learn. For now, just focus on healing. Everything else can wait. He moved to the door, leading into what must be the rest of his dwelling. Before he left, he turned back. Rin, I meant what I said last night. You're safe here, for as long as you need. Then he was gone, leaving Rin alone with her thoughts and a plate of strange food and the impossible reality that she had found kindness on a world her people had deemed unworthy of contact. Outside, helicopters thrummed in the distance. But in the garage, wrapped in borrowed blankets and protected by an old human who wanted nothing in return, Rin felt something she had not felt since before the crash: hope. 2 weeks passed like pages, turning in a book Rin had never read before. Each day brought small revelations about the human called David and the strange world she had crashed upon. The basement became her sanctuary. David had moved her down there on the 3rd day when military helicopters came too close. He had carried her himself, his old arms shaking slightly with her weight, but never faltering. The space he created was more comfortable than her quarters had been on the ship, heat lamps positioned at careful angles, soft bedding piled in a corner, a small table with water and food always fresh. He had even brought down something he called a television and a laptop computer, showing her how to use both. Figured you might get bored, he had said. Password's Blue Moon 42 if you want the internet. Don't go ordering anything, though. My bank account can't handle it. He had smiled when he said it. Rin was learning that David smiled often, even when making jokes she did not fully understand. Her wing was healing. Slowly, painfully, but healing nonetheless. David changed the splint every few days with steady hands that never hurt her more than necessary. He had researched bone healing on his computer, reading articles late into the night. Rin knew because she could hear him moving around upstairs, the soft glow of his screen visible through the gaps in the floorboards. He was losing sleep to take care of her. The realization had troubled her for days. During the daylight hours, David worked in his garage. Rin could hear the clang of tools, sometimes music playing from an old radio, occasionally his voice talking to himself as he worked through problems. He would come down every few hours to check on her, bringing food or just sitting to talk. The talking had become Rin's favorite part. David told stories about his wife and her garden that grew vegetables bigger than they had any right to be. About his time in the military when he was young, fixing vehicles in places he said were even hotter than her homeworld. About his children who lived far away now, busy with their own lives. Do you miss them? Rin had asked during one of these conversations. Every day, David had admitted. But that's life. People grow up and move on. I'm proud of them. That's what matters. Rin had shared stories too. About Scar with its 3 sons and crystal cities. About her training as a reconnaissance pilot. About the pride of the Scarith people and their vast empire across the stars. But she found herself editing as she talked, leaving out the parts about how Scarith viewed other species as tools or threats. How they built their empire through conquest and forced treaties. How mercy was seen as weakness and compassion as a character flaw. Those truths felt ugly when she tried to speak them in this basement with this kind human who asked for nothing. The internet had become both fascinating and disturbing. Rin spent hours exploring Earth's information networks. She learned about human history, their wars and their peacetimes, their achievements and their failures. But what struck her most were the small things. Videos of humans rescuing animals from floods. Organizations that fed hungry people across the world. Strangers donating parts of their own bodies to save dying children they had never met. People running into danger to pull others to safety. It was everywhere. This pattern of helping without counting the cost. The Scarth had nothing like this. When her people helped, it was transactional. You saved a life, that life owed you. You gave resources, you expected return with interest. Even family relationships operated on clear hierarchies and expectations. But humans seemed to help just because someone needed help. One evening, David came down carrying 2 bowls of something that smelled rich and warm. He handed one to Rin and sat down with the other. "Vegetable soup," he said. "Anne's recipe. Figured you might be tired of the usual stuff." Rin tasted it carefully. The warmth spread through her in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. "It is good." She'd be happy to hear that. David ate a spoonful. She loved feeding people. Always made too much food on purpose, so she could send folks home with leftovers. Why? Why what? Why did you want to feed people who were not family? David considered this. Because she could. Because she had plenty and others might not. Because it made her happy to see people enjoy something she made. He shrugged and didn't need complicated reasons to be kind. Rin ate more soup, thinking, my people would call that inefficient. Probably is by some measures. David smiled. But efficiency isn't everything. Sometimes doing something nice for someone just because you can is worth being a little inefficient. You live by that principle. Try to. Don't always succeed, but I try. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. The basement was warm and quiet. Above them, wind rattled the windows, but down here, everything felt safe. David, Rin said eventually, my people are looking for me. I figure they might be. If they find me, they will discover that you helped me. That will create problems. David set his empty bowl aside. What kind of problems? The collective has laws about contact with species not yet approved for interaction. Your people are not approved. I violated protocol by allowing contact with you, even though the crash was not my choice. But I have made it worse by staying, by talking with you. What happens if they find out? Rin's tail curled around herself. I would face punishment. You would be classified as an exposure risk. Meaning they would ensure you could not share what you learned. They would remove your memories of me. Possibly more. David was quiet for a long moment. His face showed no fear, only thought. Finally, he spoke. Well then, we'd better make sure they don't find out the whole story. You do not understand. If a rescue team comes, you would be in danger. Maybe, but you'd be safe, right? Back with your people. Yes, but then that's what matters. David stood and collected their bowls. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, you focus on healing. You are not concerned for yourself. David paused at the stairs. Rin, I'm 73 years old. I've lived a full life. You're still young. You've got time ahead of you. If I have to choose between keeping myself safe and keeping you safe, that's not really a choice at all. He climbed the stairs before she could respond, leaving her alone with thoughts that spun like leaves in wind. This human would sacrifice his own safety for hers. Not because he owed her, not because she could offer him anything, simply because he had decided her life had value. Rin had been taught that mercy was weakness, that self-preservation came before all else, that only fools put others before themselves. But David was no fool. He was clever with his hands, wise in his words, kind in his actions. If this was foolishness, then perhaps her people had the definition wrong. She pulled up the internet on a laptop again. This time she searched for something specific. Philosophies about kindness, articles about altruism, studies on why humans helped each other. The more she read, the more she realized something that would have horrified her teachers back on Scar. Perhaps humanity was not primitive at all. Perhaps they had evolved something her people had lost or never had. The ability to care about others not related to them, not beneficial to them, not obligated to them, just others who needed care. Her emergency beacon sat in pieces in the corner. She had found it in the wreckage David had quietly retrieved from the mountains. He had brought it down without being asked, knowing she might want to repair it someday. The beacon could call her people, could bring rescue, could take her home, but it would also bring David into danger. Rin looked at the pieces for a long time. Then she carefully packed them away in a box and pushed it under the bed. Not yet. She was not ready to make that call yet. Maybe she was learning more from David than she realized. Above her, she heard him moving around in his kitchen, humming something tuneless the way he always did, living his simple life in his simple way, not knowing that he was teaching an alien warrior that perhaps strength came in forms her people had never considered. Forms like choosing to protect someone else even when it cost you. Forms like kindness without keeping score. Forms like an old human in a garage who had whispered for words that had changed everything, that you're safe now. And for the first time since the crash, Rin truly believed it. The emergency beacon activated itself at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday that Rin would remember for the rest of her life. She woke to a pulsing green light from the box under her bed. The damaged beacon had apparently repaired its core systems automatically, something she had not counted on. Now, it was broadcasting her location to any Scarth ship within range of the solar system. That Rin's blood went cold. She scrambled to the box and pulled out the beacon, but the damage was done. The signal had already gone out. Somewhere in the void of space, her people would hear it and come. They always came for their own. Footsteps thundered down the basement stairs. David appeared in his night clothes, hair sticking up, eyes wide with concern. "What's wrong?" "I heard something." Rin held up the beacon. "It activated on its own. The signal has been sent. My people will come now." David looked at the pulsing device, then at her. His face went through several expressions before settling on acceptance. "How long do we have?" "If a ship is within 3 light years, perhaps 2 days. If farther, longer. But they will come." "Okay." David sat down on the bottom step. "Okay. We knew this might happen. You should hide. When they arrive, you should not be here. And leave you to face them alone? Not happening. David, you do not understand. My people will not be kind about this. I broke the collective's most important law by making contact with you. They will be angry. All the more reason you shouldn't face them by yourself." Rin wanted to scream at his stubbornness. Instead, she forced herself to think. There were protocols for this. The collective had procedures. If she could convince the rescue team that David knew nothing, that the contact was minimal, perhaps they would spare him. "I need to tell you something," Rin said, "about my people and how we view yours." David listened quietly as she explained. The collective's observations of Earth, the debates about whether humans were ready for contact, the decision that humanity was too violent, too primitive, too unpredictable, the strict laws forbidding any Scarth from revealing themselves to humans. "So we're not good enough for your alien club," David said when she finished. There was no anger in his voice, just understanding. "It is not about worth. It is about compatibility with collective values." "Values like what?" Rin struggled to find words. "Efficiency, order, hierarchy, the strong protecting the weak only when it benefits the strong. The elimination of waste, which includes excessive emotion or attachment." Sounds lonely. The simple observation hit harder than any argument could have. "Yes," Rin admitted. "It is." They sat in silence. The beacon continued its pulsing. Above them, the house creaked in the wind. "What happens when they get here?" David asked. "They will take me home. They will question me about the crash and what happened after. If they discover that you know about us, about the collective, about anything beyond this planet." She trailed off. "They'll do something to me." "Yes." "What if you lie? Tell them you survived alone. They will scan the area. They will find evidence of your care. The splint on my wing is too precise. The food I have been eating will show in my system. They will know someone helped me." David rubbed his face with both hands. When he looked up again, his eyes were clear and determined. "Then we tell them the truth, but we control how we tell it. You were injured. I found you. I provided basic care because you were dying. You never spoke to me, never communicated anything. I thought you were some kind of animal. You maintained the deception to protect both of us. It was not a bad plan. It might even work if the rescue team was willing to accept it. They will still see you as an exposure risk," Rin said quietly. "Maybe they'll just wipe my memory like you said. Wouldn't be the worst thing. Might even be better." "Better? To forget everything. To forget you? No. But if it keeps you safe and keeps me alive, I can live with it." Rin felt something crack inside her chest. This human, this strange, wonderful human, was willing to lose everything to protect her. even his memories of her. "I do not want you to forget me," she said, and was shocked to feel moisture gathering in her eyes. Tears. She had not cried since she was a hatchling. David moved to sit beside her. He did not touch her, respecting the space she needed, but his presence was solid and warm and real. "Hey," he said softly. "Whatever happens, these past few weeks happened. Nobody can change that. Even if I forget, you'll remember. And that counts for something. It counts for everything." Rin whispered. They stayed like that for a long time. The beacon pulsed its signal into space. Somewhere far above, stars turned in their eternal dance. And in a basement in Colorado, two beings from different worlds sat together in the dark and waited for the future to arrive. The next day, David went about his normal routine. He worked in the garage, hummed his tuneless songs, made his simple meals. But Rin saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes drifted to the sky more often than usual. She spent the time preparing, rehearsing her story, planning what she would say and how she would say it. She had to protect David. That had become the most important thing in her world. That on the second night, the sky lit up with fire. A Scarth ship dropped from orbit faster than any human satellite could track. It landed in the mountains behind David's property, using stealth fields to avoid detection by Earth's primitive sensors. Rin felt the vibration through the ground. "They are here," she said. David stood and put on his coat. "Then let's go meet them. You do not have to come." "Yes, I do." They walked out into the night together. The cold bit at Rin's scales, but she barely noticed. Her wing, still splinted but stronger now, folded against her side. David walked beside her, his breath creating clouds in the freezing air. The ship sat like a silver tear in the darkness. Its ramp extended and 3 figures descended. Scarth warriors in full armor, weapons ready. Leading them was Commander Tolth, a veteran she knew by reputation. That Tolth's eyes found her immediately. Then they moved to David. His face hardened. "Pilot Rin," he said in their language. "You live." "I live, Commander. And this human. He has seen you. Seen the ship. This is a Category 1 breach." David stepped forward. He could not understand their words, but he could read the threat in Tolth's stance. "My name is David Reeves. This creature was injured. I provided shelter. That is all." Tolth's translator fed him the words. He laughed, cold and sharp. "Shelter. How primitive. How quaint." Rin moved between them. "Commander, I invoke right of preservation." The other warriors went still. Tolth's expression shifted to surprise. "You what?" "This human saved my life when I was dying. By the ancient laws, I owe him life debt. He is under my protection. That law has not been invoked in centuries, but it still stands." Tolth studied her for a long moment. Then he looked at David again, seeing him with new eyes. "This changes things, but the collective will still demand answers. I will provide them. And him." Tolth gestured to David. Rin took a breath. This was the moment. Everything balanced on what came next. "He comes with us to testify. Then he returns home, memories intact. The collective will never allow it. Then the collective can explain why they violate right of preservation." Rin lifted her head high. "I am daughter of the third house. My claim is valid. Will you deny me, Commander?" She was gambling everything on old laws and ancient traditions, on the chance that Tolth valued honor more than convenience. The commander was silent for a very long time. Finally, he spoke. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Pilot Rin. Perhaps both." He made a gesture to his warriors. They lowered their weapons slightly. "The human may come, but you will both face the collective's judgment." "I understand." David touched her shoulder gently. "Rin, what's happening?" She looked up at him, this human who had given her everything and asked for nothing. "We are going on a journey," she said. "Together." "Okay," David said simply. "Let's go." And side by side, a Scarth warrior and an old human walked toward a ship from another world, ready to face whatever came next as long as they faced it together. The ship left Earth behind faster than David could process. One moment he was standing in snow-covered mountains. The next he was inside a vessel that hummed with power beyond anything humanity had created. Through a viewing portal, he watched his planet shrink to a blue marble, then disappear entirely as they jumped to faster-than-light travel. He should have been terrified. Instead, he felt oddly calm. Rin stayed close to him as Commander Tolf showed them to a small compartment. The space was clearly meant for Scarith, with sleeping platforms too small for David's human frame. But there was a chair and a table, and that was enough. "We reached Scar in 6 of your days," Tolf said. "The collective has been notified. They are not pleased." "I can imagine," Rin replied. After the commander left, David sat down heavily, the weight of what was happening finally settling on him. "So, we're going to meet your leaders. The Collective Council, 12 members representing the major houses of our people." Rin paced the small space, her tail swishing with agitation. "They will question us both. They will want to understand why I broke their laws. And what will you tell them? The truth, that I was dying and you saved me, that you asked for nothing in return, that you protected me from your own authorities even when it put you at risk." David leaned back in the chair. "Will they believe you? They will have no choice. I'm using old laws they cannot easily dismiss. But David, you must understand something. The collective sees kindness as weakness. They will not comprehend why you helped me. Then I'll explain it to them. They may not listen. You are human. To them, your species is primitive." "Primitive," David repeated with a small smile. "Well, maybe we are in some ways. We don't have spaceships or energy weapons. But I don't think technology is what makes a species advanced." Rin stopped pacing. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you folks might have faster ships and better tools. But from what you've told me, you've lost something along the way. You've forgotten how to care about each other without counting the cost. That seems pretty primitive to me." The words hung in the air. Rin sat down across from him, her scaled face thoughtful. "You would say this to the collective? Knowing they hold your fate in their hands. Truth is truth, whether it's convenient or not." Rin made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are either the bravest human I have ever met or the most foolish. Probably a bit of both." The days passed in a strange routine. Tolf allowed them to move freely within certain sections of the ship. David explored with the wonder of a child, asking questions about everything. The Scarith crew seemed puzzled by his curiosity, but answered when Rin translated. He learned that the ship was powered by captured starlight, that the crew had families waiting on Scar, that they had been searching for Rin for nearly a month before her beacon activated. "We do not leave our people behind," one warrior told him. "Even when they break laws, they're still ours." David found that idea interesting. These aliens claimed not to value compassion, yet they had searched tirelessly for a lost pilot. Maybe they were not so different from humans after all. On the 4th day, Rin took him to the observation deck. Through the massive windows, space stretched out in all directions. Stars burned in colors David had never imagined. "It is beautiful, is it not?" Rin said softly. "Yeah, and would have loved this. She always wanted to see the stars up close." "Tell me about her." So David did. He talked about In's laugh and her terrible singing voice and the way she always burned toast, but somehow made the best pies in the county. He talked about their life together, the good years and the hard ones, the joy and the grief. Rin listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "You loved her very much. Still do. Death doesn't change that. I'm beginning to understand this thing you call love. It is not transactional. It simply is." "That's about right. My people abandoned that concept long ago. We have partnerships and alliances, but not this thing you describe. Perhaps that is why we have achieved so much technologically, but feel so empty." David looked at her. "It's not too late to remember. Is that what you will tell the collective? If they'll listen." On the 6th day, they arrived at Scar. David pressed his face to the viewing portal and stared in awe. 3 suns hung in the sky, bathing the planet in light that shifted from gold to amber to deep orange. Cities rose like crystal spires, catching the light and throwing it back in rainbow patterns. "It is magnificent," he breathed. "It is home," Rin said, but she sounded uncertain. The ship landed in a massive facility at the base of the tallest spire. As they descended the ramp, David saw hundreds of Scarith going about their business. All of them stopped to stare at the human walking among them. Tolf led them through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Finally, They reached a chamber so large David could barely see the ceiling. 12 Scarith sat on raised platforms arranged in a circle. The collective council. Their eyes were cold as they examined the human standing before them. The eldest spoke first. I am Council Leader Vrex. You are David Reeves of Earth. I am. You have violated our laws by gaining knowledge of our existence. I helped someone who was dying. That's not a crime where I come from. Murmurs rippled through the council. Vrex held up a hand for silence. You claim you expected no reward for this help. I expected nothing. Then you are a fool. Maybe, but I'm a fool who sleeps well at night. Vrex's eyes narrowed. You dare to mock this council? I dare to tell the truth. You asked me a question. I answered it. If you don't like the answer, that's your problem, not mine. Rin stepped forward quickly. Honored Council, please understand that humans have different cultural values than ours. They practice something called altruism, which is caring for others without expectation of return. We know what altruism is, another council member said coldly. We abandoned it as inefficient. Did you? David asked. Then why did Commander Tolth search for Rin for a month? Why did his crew risk themselves to find one lost pilot? Seems like altruism to me. The council went silent. Tolth, standing guard near the door, looked uncomfortable. Vrex leaned forward. You equate our loyalty to our people with your primitive emotional responses. I equate caring about others with caring about others, no matter what fancy words you use to describe it. You understand nothing of our culture. David took a breath. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. You're right, he said. I don't understand why a species that can travel between stars has forgotten how to be kind. I don't understand how you can build all this. He gestured to the magnificent chamber around them, but think that helping someone without counting the cost makes you weak. He paused, meeting Vrex's cold gaze steadily. Where I come from, we measure greatness by how we treat those who can do nothing for us. By that measure, you might have better technology than us, but I'm not sure you're more advanced. The silence that followed was absolute. Rin held her breath. Tolth stood frozen. The entire council stared at the old human who had just challenged everything they believed. Finally, Vrex spoke. You are either incredibly brave or suicidally foolish, human. I'm just honest, David said. And I'm telling you that the creature who crawled into my garage dying and scared deserved help. Not because she could offer me anything. Not because her people are powerful or have amazing technology. But because every living thing deserves compassion when they're suffering. That's not weakness. That's what separates people from monsters. Another council member, younger than Vrex, spoke up. This human shows no fear of us. Should I be afraid? David asked. You could kill me easily, sure. But being afraid of death doesn't make it less likely. Might as well face it with dignity. The young council member tilted her head. What is your name, human? David. Just David. Just David. You saved Pilot Rin's life and asked nothing in return. That's right. And now you stand before the collective and lecture us on morality. I'm just pointing out what I see. She looked at Vrex. Perhaps we should hear more from this human. And from Pilot Rin. I wish to understand this altruism they speak of. Vrex looked displeased but nodded. Very well. Pilot Rin, approach. Tell us your story. Leave nothing out. Rin walked forward, and David saw her straighten her spine. She began to speak, and her words would change more than just her fate. They would plant seeds in a culture that had forgotten what it meant to care without counting. Rin told them everything. The crash in the mountains. The 3 days dying in the snow. Crawling into David's garage with her last strength. Waking to find him watching over her, having stayed the entire night to make sure she survived. She described his careful treatment of her wing. The way he fed her without knowing what she could eat. How he hid her from his own authorities at risk to himself. The weeks of recovery in his basement where he asked her no questions about technology or weapons, only about whether she was comfortable and if she needed anything. The council listened in silence. David watched their faces, trying to read alien expressions. Some seemed skeptical, others curious. Vrex remained cold and unreadable. When Rin finished, the young council member who had spoken earlier raised her hand. I am Council Member Shara. I wish to ask the human a question. Speak, Vrex said. Shara looked at David. You cared for Pilot Rin for weeks. You could have traded her to your authorities for reward. You could have demanded payment. You could have abandoned her once she was stable. Why did you do none of these things? David thought about how to answer. Finally, he said, my wife used to say we're all just walking each other home. Life's hard. The universe is big and cold and mostly empty. When you find someone who needs help, you help them. Not because you'll get something out of it, but because someday you might need help too, and you hope someone will be there for you. So it is reciprocal, another council member said. You help so that others will help you. That is transactional. No, David shook his head. It's different. I don't help Rin, so she'll help me later. I help her because it's the right thing to do. If she never does anything for me, that's fine. That's not why I did it. Then why? David struggled for words. How do you explain something so fundamental? Because she mattered. Because her life had value. Because I couldn't live with myself if I let her die when I could prevent it. Rex spoke. And if helping her had cost you everything, your home, your freedom, your life, then it would have cost me everything. But at least I would have died knowing I tried to do right. The council members exchanged glances. Shara spoke again. Commander Tolth, you observed this human. What is your assessment? Tall stepped forward. He is as he appears, council member. Simple, honest. He showed no fear of Pilot Rin despite her alien nature. He showed no fear of us despite our weapons and power. He is either too foolish to understand danger or too principled to let it change his actions. Which do you believe it is? Tolth looked at David for a long moment. I believe it is principle, and I believe we have misjudged his species. More murmuring from the council. Rex raised his hand for silence. This is a significant claim, Commander. Yes, council leader. But consider this. We have observed humanity for years. We have seen their conflicts and judged them unready for contact. But we have not lived among them. We have not seen what this human has shown us. A willingness to sacrifice without calculation. To protect the helpless. To choose compassion over personal gain. Rex turned to David. Do all humans share your values? No, David admitted. We've got plenty of selfish folks. Cruel ones too. But we've also got millions who volunteer their time to help others. Who donate money they can barely afford to those who have less. Who run into burning buildings to save strangers. Who give parts of their own bodies to save dying children. He paused. We're not perfect. We fight and we hurt each other and we make terrible mistakes. But most of us try to do better. Try to help when we can. Try to leave the world a little better than we found it. Maybe that's not as impressive as flying between stars, but it means something. Shara leaned forward. It means everything human. It means your species has achieved something we lost long ago. Rex looked at her sharply. Council member Shara, you overstep. Do I, council leader? When did we last help another species without demanding tribute? When did we last sacrifice for those who could offer us nothing? We call ourselves advanced, but we have forgotten the most basic truth. That civilization is not measured by our technology, but by how we treat each other. Other council members began speaking at once. Arguments erupted. David stood quietly in the center of the chaos, Rin at his side. You have started something, she whispered to him. Wasn't trying to. That is why it matters. Finally, Vrex called for order. The chamber fell silent again. The old council leader looked tired suddenly, his scales seeming to lose some of their luster. This council will deliberate, he said. You will both be confined to quarters until we reach a decision. Guards escorted David and Rin to a comfortable suite in the spire. Once alone, Rin collapsed onto a resting platform. I cannot believe you lectured the collective council on morality, she said. Well, they're not supposed? No one has ever dared. Well, they asked my opinion. I gave it to them. Rin laughed, a sound David had never heard from her before. It was high and musical and filled with genuine joy. You are impossible, David Reeves. I've been told that before. They waited for 2 days. During that time, David was allowed to walk on a balcony overlooking the city. He watched Scarth go about their lives in the streets below. They looked busy and purposeful, but he saw no laughter, no spontaneous gatherings, no moments of joy shared between strangers that on the 3rd day, they were summoned back to the council chamber. The collective sat as before, but something had changed. The atmosphere felt less cold. Vrex spoke. We have deliberated. We have reviewed all evidence. We have considered the arguments presented. David braced himself. The council has decided, Vrex continued, that Pilot Rin will face no punishment for her breach of protocol. Her actions were driven by survival, and she invoked ancient rights we must honor. Rin sagged with relief. As for you, David Reeves of Earth. Vrex paused. You have presented us with a challenge. Your existence proves that humanity possesses qualities we had not recognized. The Council votes to establish formal relations with Earth. David blinked. What? Shara smiled. You will return to your planet as Earth's first official contact with the Scarth Collective. Pilot Rin will accompany you as our ambassador. Together, you will begin the process of bringing humanity into the galactic community. I'm just a mechanic, David protested. You are proof that advancement is not only technological, Vrex said. His voice was softer now. You have reminded us of something we had forgotten. That strength includes compassion. That wisdom includes kindness. That true civilization is measured by how we treat those who could do nothing for us. He stood, and the other council members followed. Go home, David Reeves. Show your people the stars. And perhaps, in time, teach us to remember what we have lost. 6 months later, David stood in his garage working on his old truck. The door was open to let in the spring air. Flowers that and had planted years ago were blooming in the yard. Rin sat on a stool nearby, reading something on a tablet. She lived in the apartment above the garage now, Earth's official Scarth ambassador. But most evenings, she came down to sit with David while he worked. There is a news crew coming tomorrow, she said. They want to interview you again. I'll tell them the same thing I always do. I just helped someone who needed it. They are calling you a hero. The human who changed galactic policy. David wiped his hands on a rag. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who did what anyone should do. Rin set down her tablet. That is what makes you a hero, David. You do not see anything special in choosing kindness. To you, it is simply what one does. A vehicle pulled up outside. Ray Donnelly climbed out, carrying a bag of takeout food. Figured you two might want some dinner, the sheriff called out. Come on in, Ray, David called back. The three of them ate together in the garage, talking about nothing important and everything that mattered. Outside, the sun set over the mountains. Somewhere above, stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. And in a simple garage in Colorado, 3 people from different worlds shared a meal and each other's company, proving that sometimes the greatest bridges are built not with grand gestures, but with simple acts of kindness. Rin looked at David and thought about how far she had come from that frozen night when she had crawled through his door. She thought about how 4 simple words had changed everything. That you're safe now. Words that meant protection without price. Care without condition. Kindness without calculation. Words that had reminded an entire civilization what they had forgotten. That the measure of a people was not in their ships or their weapons or their technology, but in their willingness to help someone who needed it, simply because they could. David caught her looking and smiled. What are you thinking about? Home, Rin said, and she realized that she was not talking about Scar with its 3 suns and crystal cities. She was talking about this garage, this human, this place where she had learned that sometimes the most advanced species was the one that remembered how to care. Yeah, David said, understanding as he always did. Home's a good thing to think about. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance. Inside, warmth and laughter and friendship filled the air, and somewhere in the vast universe, other species were learning about the humans who measured greatness not by conquest or technology, but by simple acts of compassion shown to those who needed them most. The humans who, when they found something cold and scared and dying at their door, whispered the words that changed everything. That you're safe now, and meant it at the end.